Light Shade, actually. As in the bottom right, spawning as the blue pros player. Playing for Team Africa Freaks, it is going to be Stats.
And his opponent in the top left, the red Protoss player, sponsored by Corsair, it is PartinG.
Yes, PartinG indeed.
I don't think he has a team right now, right?
I think he used to be in DPG.
Yeah, that I know as well, but at least it doesn't show. So all I see every time, I'm not sure if you guys also follow PartinG on Instagram. He always thanks Corsair before his matches, which is super cool. And the fans as well, very important.
And the fans, don't forget the fans. Always thank the fans.
Exactly. Shout out to the fans that make everything possible. And both players going for a scout, both players seeing what the other one is up to, and no one going for any of the one gate expands, which are less common on maps like Lightshade, I assume.
Yeah. There is something, a neat little trick that is possible. And if someone was going to do it, it's PartinG, where you check if there's a second gateway, or sometimes you just check if there's a natural, and if there's not, you go back on the map with the probe that you scouted with to go and proxy a pylon. This is not something that is extremely common, but it is something that people do, because then you confirmed, okay, I don't need to block anything, and then proxying a pylon is just usually kind of a good call. You can proxy a Stargate, proxy a Robo, proxy a gateway, or just simply proxy a pylon and confuse your opponent. We saw it yesterday in the... Was it the Astrea Trap series? On Death Aura,
yeah, on Death Aura. Did that. That one was a little bit different though, because he left relatively late, or even showed the probe right after that pylon, so it was a little bit obvious that there was no proxy, but I get the idea behind it. Yeah. And for now, no one doing any of that sort, so very standard openers. And let's see what the first gateway units are. Stalker from both players.
Yeah. Kind of to be expected on a map like Lightshade, where it always feels like these... it's difficult because there's two ramps. So in a defensive position, you do need some big power units, basically. I always feel like at the start. Playing something like Sentry Stalker, if you get caught out of position, it can be hard or harder because there's two ramps. You can't really control your ramp as easily as, for example, a map like Death Aura, where it's a little more common, where people just go up to the middle immediately because they want to take the speed zones and then they don't want to run around. So I feel like Stalker is good. He follows it up with Sentry, stats that is, and we have a Stargate coming out of PartinG. I've actually seen him play this build a fair amount. I didn't know he followed this up with a Sentry though. I hadn't seen that yet. In my mind, what he did, he either just Stalker Oracle, or Stalker and something like Adept. I know he likes Oracles very much. It does give you some control of the game, of course. Even if you don't do any damage with the Oracles, it forces your opponent to leave Stalkers in their mineral line, and very often it allows the other Protoss player to be out on the map more, because if one person needs to keep like 5 Stalkers in their mineral lines, then yeah, you probably can just be on the map with your own Stalkers, and that allows for aggressive opportunities later on in the game when we're both on 4 gate or something like that.
So, I mean, rather standard openers, those. That's also going for a fast Twilight with a bunch of sentries to be safe. And yeah, PartinG just going for that single Oracle. He did Chronos very late, so it should be a second Oracle as well. And what do you think about the second Oracle rather than earlier extra tech?
So yeah, this is just going to delay your Twilight. Actually, if you play Stargate into Twilight, very often you'll start your blink faster than your opponent, because they need to invest way more in gas units to deal with that single Oracle. So they'll usually delay blink a little bit, but versus Oracle, the Oracle player will have way later blink. So you need to be a little bit careful there. It can be tricky to hold certain counterattack pushes, and Oracle also just is a big investment with which you need to do some damage. He also warped in 2 Adept, so let's see what type of rotations he's going to be using here. So we see Adept trying to shade into the main base, doesn't get it off, and big damage already on one of the Adepts. Ooh, I'm not a big fan of that shade finish, actually.
Yeah, Stats still has 1 force field, so he used 2 force fields to defend this, and he still lost an extra probe. Now let's see what the Oracles can do. In the meantime, they do catch the 2 probes that were stuck because of the wall, so he does get 4 probes. So now he is exactly up 4 probes, but obviously his blink and his +1 are way later than Stats is.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not... I don't think this position is brilliant for either player. This might be a proxy Dark Shrine, by the way, or a proxy Gateway for a follow-up 4-gate pressure coming out of PartinG. I always find these builds difficult to work with unless you do a lot of damage with the oracles. Oh my god, he finds a crap ton of damage here. 5 workers as... This is the thing with oracles, if you don't pay attention for like half a second, like Stats wasn't even that far out of position, right? He was like half a centimeter too low. And just like that, there's so many angles the oracles can take. Stats covered almost all of them, but he just was slightly out of position, loses 5 workers, and now he actually potentially could be in a bit of trouble. He's looking for that the proxy gateway though. I think he's going to find it with the Dark Shrine.
Yeah, that's really nice because I mean that's quite an investment by PartinG on the other side of the map, and I expect him fully to just cancel that now. Immediately he does cancel both the Dark Shrine and the gateway, so his plan is thwarted, but at the same time he does expand a little bit faster than Stats towards his own third base due to the probe damage that Stats took in the early game.
Yeah. The one thing that Stats does have is that faster +1, and very often, I mentioned it before, with faster +1, it's difficult to do +1 timings that aren't extremely all-in, right? Because the +1 finishes just around the time that you either want to be saturating your third base, or in this case, still want to be taking your third base. So that never really times out too well, but it can set you up for a really powerful +2 timing where your opponent is only on +1. And if you're very Stalker heavy, that can really make a big difference in these engagements. So I'm curious to see if that's something that Stats is going to do. We see him chrono out of Prism, and he is cutting worker production.
Now, I do believe that he wants to move out, and he also caught an Oracle, because I don't think PartinG expected Blink to be quite ready yet, so he did lose one of the Oracles, which means that he now doesn't need to leave as many units at home anymore. Obviously, the one Oracle not enough to one-shot workers at the very least. PartinG scouts that move out though, he sees no units are at home, and he even saw the War Prism. But is he ready for it? Do you think he can hold the third Nexus here?
I'm not sure. There's a lot of freaking Stalkers here on the map, and it's kind of surprising. If he can survive till +1, it might be okay. He lost both Oracles, by the way, so yeah, absolutely nothing being left at home right now for Stats. That's not quite what you want as PartinG. Blink forward, a bit slow there with the blink away. Misses the second blink away. Well, that's a really big deal. That should never happen. Super Battery gets used already, but gets blinked on, and this needs to be a pro pool. There's no Immortal here. Oh, that was a terrible start of the fight for PartinG.
Yeah, really good execution by Stats. He noticed that he just has more units than PartinG. He blinks on top of the shield battery, and then uses the War Prism as a secondary blink for the Stalkers with +1 against unupgraded Stalkers. He's just trading fantastically here, and I think he looks poised to take map number 1 here.
Yeah, this... I feel like if the initial micro of PartinG there is a little sharper, 2 Blink Stalkers or 2 Stalkers there is such a big deal. If someone blinks forward, they should never be capable of killing Stalkers. They might be able to get the first one if you're not paying attention, but the second one, that really is kind of a big deal. And it worries me a bit for PartinG this day, because usually his micro is the one thing that he's very, very good at. And he didn't look that sharp in game number 1. Losing both Oracles also is very annoying, as of course you don't force your opponent to leave anything at home anymore. You don't have stasis at home, so all of the advantages that you usually have after an Oracle early game, he kind of lost as well. Sure, it's nice that he does some damage, but it's still an asset that you can keep and you can carry it into the mid and even in the late game. Revelation, stasis wards, these things, they never go out of fashion, Lambo. They never do.
Yeah, I didn't mind PartinG's position. I was actually very surprised how slow he was to react there, because he knew the push was happening. He saw it with the Phoenix, with the Revelated Phoenix. So yeah, I was very surprised. He obviously knew something was coming and he prepared extra shield batteries, but he just didn't look at his army, or at least he didn't respond right away the way we are used to seeing it from PartinG, who's known to probably have possibly even the best Protoss micro out there with his Stalkers. So
yeah.
Very surprising to see him outmatched here by Stats.
Yeah, I showed it during the fight as well. Like at some point after the blink forward and after he blinked on the battery, the Stalker count actually was 16 versus 16 there, and the probes weren't dead yet. Or sorry, 16 against 14. Now, if that's the case and these 2 Stalkers are alive, you have 16 against 16. Sure, you're down +1, but your opponent needs to kind of protect his Prism, doesn't have a blink anymore, and also like the probes are going to tank quite a bit. So I think at worst case scenario, he'll just survive with some probe losses. But yeah, dying there seems a bit much. It's a little bit worrying in my opinion, but let's see if perhaps he can turn it around here in game number 2 in the top right, spawning as the red Protoss player. It's going to be, of course, Mr. PartinG.
And his opponent, up 1-0 in this series, playing for the Afrika Freaks, it is Stats.
Ooh.
Yeah, and now that we do have the ramp, both players are going for a low ground wall. And let's see if this is going to be... I suppose both of them are going to try to scout and then try to block each other.
Yeah. So usually what you do is you get your gateway and then you scout with that. Now, there's one thing that PartinG has been doing, and I think he's doing it. We see no chrono boost on the main. It's where he gets a 17 Nexus. Now, you need really good probe micro to pull this off, because it's like a difference. It's like 15 minerals, something like that, 10, 15 minerals. So it's really close always. If you mess up your probe, he should cancel that probe for sure. Like, that's going to be cancelled.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah, he's fine. So you can arrive a little bit earlier than what Stats did here, because I think he built a 16 gate. A lot of people have started actually playing 15 gate. So before the 16 probe and before the chrono boost on the main, just to block this type of nexus. And there's a lot of things that PartinG actually does with this as well, which are kind of interesting. I've seen him play the proxy pylon with a bunch of gateways in the opponent's base, not really trying to hide it. Obviously, initially trying to hide it, but afterwards not caring as much. Oh, okay, this is something else again. He's gonna go in for the scout. It's the delayed scout. He's not going to block his opponent. And he's just going to go on for some heavy pressure. The reason why this might work, oh yeah, here we go, pile in the main, is because his cyber core is like a solid 10 seconds faster than his opponent's. And he should be saving up a lot of chrono boost in the main. He's on a single gas. Oh yeah, this is going to be some 3-gate action here.
Yeah, definitely. So a very aggressive opener to start with from PartinG, who's already chronoing the warp gate out. Stats obviously sees this with his probe and must expect that something is up. He also saw the probe movement in his main base, so now he's checking for it. He's checking at least for the pylon in the main. The question is, does he also expect that there's a pylon in the front? Or can he even punish the pylon in his own main base?
Yeah, he can punish the pylon in the main. He's pulling workers is the correct response. Does this probe see that pylon? No, it doesn't. That's kind of nice for PartinG at least. And PartinG, this is a bait, right? This is not real. He's pretending like he wants to get it up, but he really doesn't. There's a third gateway already at home, and this build can really only afford 3 gateways. Now, usually what you want to do is you want to start warping in the depths, but because there's going to be a full wall, that won't be possible. This gate is going to die before anything happens. This probe stays alive for extremely long. This gateway in the main needs to be cancelled. PartinG.
Oh wow, that's a huge mistake. That's 150 minerals gone just like that. And it's not like that gives him vision as well.
That's a massive error. By the way, behind this, don't forget, PartinG can actually just probe up pretty well as well. It's a pressure, and sure, it is. I mean, you're putting a lot of effort and a lot of resources into it, but it isn't necessarily super all-in. I'm actually surprised. It feels like this wasn't maybe as much of a bait, the one in the main, and he actually believed that it would go up. This is very confusing to me.
What I'm a little bit confused by is that he's warping in there. That's because he knows there's a full wall. Or did he expect it to be cancelled?
There's a couple of things that can happen here, right? He can either wait with it very long, or he can just hope that it is indeed cancelled. But yeah, he's not going to wait. He's just going to be shading out. It's actually weird because you can check without showing the shades most of the time that if there's a wall or not, or at least only temporarily showing the shades. By clicking them there, you'll see if they move to the side or not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The way pathing works in StarCraft. Yeah. But for now, we're going into a more of a standard game after a crazy opening phase. The thing is, Stats is down a gateway, but instead he has a way earlier forge once again. He already started his robotics, whereas I wouldn't be surprised if PartinG just takes a third nexus on the infrastructure that he has right now, plus a forge maybe.
Yeah, I think he should. I wouldn't mind a proxy Dark Shrine here with that as well. Proxy Dark Shrine kind of forces your opponent to stay at home. And if Stats is keen on moving out again, then it can be nice to have it. Now, these two adepts are going to try to shade in, because he's like, hey, 3 stalkers, I bet you killed your gateways. And he's like, oh, wait a second, never mind, you just warped them outside. PartinG realizes the wall is still there. Pylon goes down. His blink is a lot faster. But yeah, like you mentioned, his forge once again is a little bit later.
Yeah, he's even playing it safe with the robo, getting a shield battery. Now the thing is, his blink is earlier, but that doesn't really help him a whole lot, right? It's not like he can do anything with that. There's no pressure that would kill him. Oh my god, he finished that shade. That was a mistake.
Yeah. Adepts are also a way to force your opponent to leave units at home. Or at least look for it as you're moving out. Like, it's basically the same as with the oracles, right? They're units that are on the map. They're a little bit vulnerable if they move around on the map too much, but they're a really good tool at stopping pushes before they even really occur. Like, if you scout with a hallucination this type of move out and you have 2 adepts on the left side, you can shade in and you either force a warp in at home, and if they don't have a warp in, you're just gonna get 6-7 workers, and this push that isn't even really meant to be super all-in, just a heavy pressure, all of a sudden becomes super all-in. Like, this is of 4 gateways, but he is probing behind it again, because he can.
He's gonna try jumping into the main base with some force fields, and PartinG realizes this is an option and positions himself between the main and the natural. Now the thing is, if you position yourself there, you can also get force fielded out, and juked into an offensive link, and even snipes the War Prism for PartinG. Huge moves by Stats.
Yeah, huge moves by Stats. The probes. Oh, there is no probes. I was gonna say the probes need to be pulled, but there's no probes to pull here. Blink forward on the Prism, probably the right move. Does mean that this trade will go a little bit worse for PartinG than it usually would if he would blink back, but otherwise he might just straight up die. He might still just straight up die actually. +1 Stalker straight so well, and there also was a couple more. That position was superior. Stats had the ability to micro, and once again Stats in completely similar fashion is just straight up going to die. And both times I'm kind of blaming the fact that he loses his harassment units. He invests so much into harassment units, last time in Oracles, this time in these 2 adepts, and they're meant to do something. I mean, otherwise you have 2 extra Stalkers, or perhaps you could even have an Immortal. That's actually kind of a big difference. Often these fights, when it's so positionally based, where on maps like Lightshade, maps like Oxide and Jagannatha, where initially you're going to be fighting away from a battery, having these extra units is massive, because it's the difference between being able to hold that low ground and not being able to hold the low ground, and then losing the position, as we saw here.
Yeah, it looked like Stats was just in a really nice position going into the push. He wasn't even behind in workers, and he already started at +2, and he still managed to take such a good fight. PartinG blinked forward, took out the War Prism, but I like what you said there, because the initial fight went way worse than if he just microed, but he obviously felt the need to commit. It's either there is 4 more Stalkers there, or he has the worst initial fight. In either way, I'm pretty sure he would have been in a bad spot to hold this, so now he's going for the all-out counter-attack against a player that already has charged on almost +2. Obviously there is a shield battery, and he's already warping in Archon, so yeah, there's just nothing PartinG can do here really.
Stats right now is considering taking a 4th evens, moving a probe towards the left side, fights before +2, GG gets called, Stats wins this series. Extreme